Load shedding in today's heat wave is a signal of Australia's looming power crisis. Coal plants are shutting down and experts say there'll be no new investment in baseload power until there's political consensus on a carbon price. Political editor Chris Uhlmann explains.
The political heat is rising over South Australia's latest blackout.
What you've seen from the Labor Party is sheer, mindless incompetence and complacency.
This was a failure of the federal regulator rather than anything to do with the generation mix in South Australia.
The regulator admits it underestimated demand and didn't call a gas plant into play as it struggles to keep up with a changing market.
We certainly weren't asleep at the wheel.
But as East Coast power generators also struggle to meet demand in a heat wave, there is a much larger question. What does the future hold as the nation confronts the uncoordinated shutdown of old generators?
The problem that's occurring here is coming to a city near you on the eastern seaboard soon.
South Australia is the canary in the coal mine of Australia's looming power crisis. Most of the nation's investment in renewables landed there, driven by Commonwealth subsidies, not state targets. Wind farms grew to more than 40% of power supply and helped shutter the last coal-fired power station. Now the only local generation is solar, wind and very expensive gas. The state's lifeline to baseload power is an interconnector to Victoria's brown coal plants. During peak demand, if the wind drops, if the interconnector fails, supply is squeezed, the wholesale power price soars and the system faces blackouts. Soon Victoria's Hazelwood power station will close, cutting that state's supply by 22%. So Victoria's electricity grid will become more fragile. Next summer it will be tested and across the country power bills will go up. Add to that state-imposed bans on developing new gas fields and the entire political class are the authors of this crisis. The only answer is a single national bipartisan energy plan, and the simplest is to put a price on carbon.
In the absence of that carbon price, investors are just not making any decisions because they can't work out what to invest in, what to divest, when to divest, what sort of technology is going to be viable.
There are more uncomfortable summers ahead. Chris Uhlmann, ABC News, Canberra.
While politicians bicker, Australians are bracing for even higher electricity bills. Experts say big power companies are lawfully manipulating the market at the expense of consumers. Stephen Long has more.
Record temperatures have sent power prices soaring and renewable energy is copping the blame. But that doesn't sit well with some of the facts.
It's just completely wrong, I'm afraid. Flat wrong.
Fossil fuel dominates the power supply in the Sunshine State. Yet so far this year, wholesale electricity prices have skyrocketed in Queensland more often than in other states.
We've seen extreme prices, nothing to do with renewables. It's all fossil fuel in Queensland.
Prices topping a whopping $10,000 a megawatt hour on more than 100 occasions. In renewables heavy South Australia, that extreme's been reached just 3 times. Wholesale pricing makes up about a quarter of household power bills, so price spikes hit home.
Those price spikes would add about $85 to your typical Queensland electricity bill, assuming they did flow through.
Naturally, hot days and air conditioners push up demand and prices, but that's not the whole story. Power companies can also lawfully game the system to maximise profit in myriad ways.
If they can withhold their capacity and drive up the price, they might lose on the volume, but they gain far more on the price and so profit from it.
What we can see is generators flooding the market, which basically forces other generators out, then rebidding their capacity or their supply to those extreme prices, which pushes up the price for everyone.
It's been going on for years.
It's been studied and observed by the authorities and noted again and again and again.
But it's apparently all within the rules. Stephen Long, ABC News.
13 million Australians will soon be paying more for private health insurance after the federal government approved a price hike to premiums. The industry says the rise of 4.8% is necessary because medical costs have gone up. But consumers advocates say if they're young and healthy and can't afford it, consider opting out.
Thomas Saris has long wondered whether private health insurance is worth it Now he's convinced it's not.
For me, it's kind of the final nail in the coffin, I think. I don't think it's sort of worthwhile for me being my age and how healthy I am and already the cost of living being what it is.
The 27-year-old earns $60,000 a year working for a publishing company. Consumer Group Choice says he's precisely the type of customer who should rethink.
If you're not going to get sick, if you're not going to be a user of the health system, then why do you take out private health insurance?
The federal government has approved a nearly 5% increase in premiums. That's the smallest hike in a decade, but it's still 3 times higher than the rate of inflation. From April, families will have to pay another $200 for top hospital cover.